Okay. All right. We are online. God, you know what is an absolute freaking pain is the fact that every time you do this kind of stuff, you got to use like two-factor ident two-factor identification. God, this is irritating. I don't need to freaking prove it's me every freaking time. Ugh. All right. How's everybody doing out there? I'm in kind of a little bit of a jail right now. I just got notified by YouTube that I can't comment for the next 24 hours on stuff. I don't know if that applies to my videos or if it applies to just other people's videos, but yeah, I got shut off from that. I don't know why. It could be that there was one YouTube video where I had four things to say, so I put it in four separate comments. So is that spam? I don't know. I had another instance where I put something in somebody's live chat that might have offended the person. I don't know, but is it that? I don't know. Oh, have I? Have I improved my audio quality? Garfield's Bizarre Adventure says I have. I don't know what the hell's going on with that, honestly. I never changed any setting, and I think it started happening after I had a short dump in the middle of putting a video together. So, ever since then, it's just been everybody's been complaining about the quiet. So I guess I'm coming in loud and clear now. So yeah, but right now I'm in comment jail on YouTube for the next 24 hours, which sucks because somebody replied to one of my comments and now I can't say anything yet. So I just have to remember to look up my notifications tomorrow and catch back up. But geez, I mean, they don't even tell you what comment it is that offended in the first place. So how am I supposed to know what it is that I did wrong by their standards and be able to correct myself? I don't know. I said that one thing that is nice is that they did have contact us, give us feedback. So I gave them some feedback, and I was actually able to show them the screenshot and say, look, all you do is say I'm booted from commenting for the day. You're not giving me any other useful information from that, so I have no idea what I did wrong. I have no idea how to prevent myself from doing wrong in the future. I can't even appeal to say, no, this isn't spam. No, this isn't like a deceptive practice or comment or what have you. I have no idea what it is that I offended with. So, it is what it is for now. But I would like to have the same ability to appeal that I've had when one of my YouTube videos got struck for, here's something that you did medical disinformation. It's like I didn't do any medical disinformation. What the hell are you talking about? And each time that somebody's struck me for one of those, I've managed to get it cleared. But it's like I don't even know what the hell these people are talking about. So now before I sounded muffled. So did I sound muffled in my videos, or I sounded muffled on the chat, and now I don't sound muffled because I can't tell how I hear or how my voice sounds on any of these things. So I'm wondering if anybody else caught the live stream with Kevin Grevioux and Eric July just now. I did drop a couple of things in that chat. Two of them were just nice things about Kevin, and one of the things was he was wondering if he should have donated Blue Marvel to Marvel Comics like he did. Basically Blue Marvel was his character and was a character that he thought up and created. And because he wrote it for Marvel, then of course he gave over the rights to the character to Marvel. So it's now a Marvel character in their stable. And I think he deserves a great deal of thanks for that because Al Ewing took that character and has used Blue Marvel to great effect. I've only read the original Adam Legend of. Yeah, my earlier videos are pretty rough audio wise. Okay. Well, don't know what to tell you. The I have only read Adam Legend of the Blue Marvel once, and I read it on Kindle, which is not my favorite way to read this stuff. I actually had the chance to pick up Adam Legend of the Blue Marvel in trade paperback form on discount for $10 from like Lone Star Comics at the time, or I think it was maybe it had changed hands by then. but I can still see that like neon green sticker that said only $10 on it, and I passed it by, and I knew I should have picked it up because by then I'd already adopted the policy buy now and regret it later, which is probably the best policy you're ever going to have as a comic book collector. Is that if there's something that you think is interesting, that you think is and especially is it right in front of you for a sale price, go ahead and buy it. And worst case scenario, you turn it into half price books for a couple of or half price books for a couple of bucks. Don't worry about the cost in that case. I mean, unless you're hard up for cash. If you can afford it, go ahead and buy it. And then if it sucks, you can always turn it back in for some amount of credit. But don't pass it by, because now if I wanted to get a copy of Adam Legend of the Blue Marvel, I've got to go on eBay and I've got to pay like $100 for that thing. And that's not even signed. That's just the book. That's just $100 for that. Like, nah, sorry, I'm not paying that much for it. Now, thankfully, I was able to find it on Kindle form, but Kindle is just not the same. I mean, reading comics online and reading stuff that's in your hands is never the same. So yeah, I want to have a paper copy someday, because I would really, really like to kind of complete my collection of all Blue Marvel stuff. I do have L. Ewing's Ultimates, both series that he did of that. I've also got Next Wave, which was the Warren Ellis series. That I don't know if Blue Marvel was in that one, or if that was Photon who was in that one, and only her, Monica Rambeau, who's going to be in that new movie, The Marvels, which I'm probably going to wait until it comes to Disney Plus to see, because I really have no enthusiasm about seeing that movie whatsoever. Oh gosh, yeah. Now Loki started streaming, and I haven't caught up on that one either. So yeah, Kevin Grevioux, he's. I don't know why Marvel won't reprint Adam Legend of the Blue Marvel. That to me, I actually did manage to chat with him on Twitter before I got booted from Twitter, and he said he had nothing to do with the fact that Marvel hadn't reprinted Adam Legend of the Blue Marvel. So I have no idea. If there's ever a Marvel bigwig at one of these conventions, then I definitely want to ask that person, hey, here is this Adam Legend of the Blue Marvel thing that's just sitting around waiting for a reprint. Why won't you reprint it? And I would like to see that at some point. So that's my hope. And anyway, one thing that Kevin Grevioux did say is that he was looking at an issue of Batgirl where he said there were like 2 pages of wasted space. And I was like, wasted space, eh? Did you happen to read ISOM number 2? Good God. Oh, that comic. That comic has been like the bane of my existence for the last week. You can see how many things I put out on it. I didn't actually do a count of how many videos I've published on ISOM number 2 at this point, because I did 13 official videos on ISOM number 1. I think I'm going to come in under 13 on ISOM number 2. So I think I've done pretty good as far as like not critiquing, not necessarily critiquing the hell out of that one quite as much. And just think, it's an expanded page count over ISOM number 1. So by all rights, I should have about 15 videos on that one. But I think I managed to condense it down to about 10 or less. And the first, oh God, I want to say the first 7 or 8 of those have already done 4,000 views all total, which is really nice. I mean, at this point, I'm actually over the number necessary to get monetized as far as watch hours goes on Twitter. And I'm already monetized when it comes to like super chats and super thanks. So if anyone wants to drop one of those, feel free. But what I'd really like to do is get up to the point where I'm getting some ad money and getting to where I can at least play an ad at the beginning of my videos, and then make a few bucks that way. And of course, that's assuming that I still get the same traffic and that I get the same traffic after the ads start. So, but I need 1,000 subscribers to do that. So, if each of you would go out and recruit one person, then I could have 1,000 subscribers, because I'm at 627 right now. So I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if I'm just going to plateau under the 1,000 mark, because I feel like what I'm doing is kind of a niche thing, and maybe it'll catch on more and more with people as this thing grows. or as the number of titles grows. I'm hoping that I'm not just going to be commenting on Rippaverse in the future. I hope I'm commenting on more things than that. In fact, I bought 2 copies of Andy Smith's Core Draft, The Reckoning. So that will be coming in, I don't know, sometime probably before the end of the year. And I will most likely, unless I just don't find anything to comment on, but I already have found stuff to comment on. I do have a video out there on Core Draft, The Reckoning, which is focusing on the 8-page preview that's available on his website. So if you look at that, I have made some suggestions there, and I don't know if he's ever seen my video to take any of those suggestions into account. One of the things that I know I said about that book is that, number one, he gives like a whole 1-page thing about a recap of kind of the Lord of the Rings prequel kind of stuff, where it explains, here was this great sundering and the races all went back to their respective corners, except man spread out over the face of the earth in various places, and now factions of men are fighting each other and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this actually would have been something good to put into multiple pages and to show the depictions over, all of the events as they happened over multiple pages, as opposed to just setting it all on one page. And the other thing I remember commenting on was I did not care for the way he portrayed Berserker mode for Core Draft, because it didn't evoke the feeling of a Berserker, which is to basically lose control of yourself, become more of an animalistic fighter. That really wasn't conveyed in the Core Draft stuff that I saw. So I don't know. I'm hoping he sees it, and I'm hoping that he'll take some of that into account, because I don't think the changes needed to convey a proper Berserker mindset, or lack of mindset in the case of a Berserker, it would be that hard to make. And yeah, so Core Draft, The Reckoning, that's something that's coming in. I'm still waiting on Wrecked Planet from Ethan Van Sciver. I think the holdup is that he hasn't yet gotten the Villainous Scum cover for Cyberfrog 2. And so when I finally get that, then I will get the have about 4 different books that I'll need to review. But I didn't buy 2 copies of each, so I won't have scans of any of them. So I'm going to have to see if in the future I'm going to need to buy multiple copies. I almost signed up for a copy of the newest version of Cyberfrog Blood Honey, because he's incorporated some of the spelling fixes that I had submitted to him into Cyberfrog Blood Honey. And most of them were like on the last 2 pages of the Diary of Heather Swain. I was like, is everyone he showed this to kind of dyslexic, where they don't know how to spell words? Because my goodness. So there will be spelling corrections that come in with this latest copy of Cyberfrog Blood Honey. I don't know if any of the other suggestions that I made with regard to that will get into the book, but at least those, everything that takes a book a little bit closer to perfection, can't complain about that. But I decided not to buy another copy of it, and the reason being is there just wasn't enough in there that I really felt like exploring, as opposed with the new stuff that's coming in, Wrecked Planet and Deleted Scenes, and what is it? Salamandroid Death Sting is another one, and then there was one other. Oh, right, it was that Heartsick Horror was the last of the Cyberfrog entries. So once I get all of those, I'll have a lot more to talk about besides just ISOM. I mean, it's kind of amazing that that ISOM and Alpha Core and Yaira, I mean, all of this stuff is starting to come out in like rapid succession, and I'm going to wind up being out some serious money trying to get a couple of copies of each of these things, because, man, I need to get scans of those. Although I have noticed that the bootleg sites are starting to get them a little more rapidly than they used to. But I want to continue to be a customer of Eric's rather than just a critiquer of Eric's, because I do not want to lose the cred of being a purchasing customer. I'm not just somebody who's throwing critiques out there. I've actually bought the book. I've actually contributed to the cause. This is something that I'm still looking to see go forward. at least for the time being. Now, if it turns out that Alpha Core and Yaira turn out to be crap, well, at that point, maybe I'll be just kind of like, see ya. I don't even care if my channel tanks after that, because I can't just keep throwing good money after bad. So Garfield's Bizarre Adventure, I agree with some of your points in regard to ISOM too, especially those empty panels with no dialogue. That is what I was definitely talking about in regard to when Kevin Grevioux said, I can't believe that the editors of DC Comics allows for so much wasted space. And now he was talking about a scene with Batgirl in the bathroom, and I'm just thinking, oh my God, he should see those 4 panels where ISOM just basically drives home from the therapist, basically. I mean, that's it. You're not going to give us anything. He's just had the most momentous conversation, probably of his life, about the most traumatic thing that happened to him in his life. And he has nothing to think in the 4 panels on the way home. I'm like, oh my God, dude. And it's not like Eric July doesn't know when to fill like panels with dialogue. I mean, look at this. Okay, so here are the panels that I'm talking about. Let me show you very quickly what those are. Okay, so he's just got done talking with Cedric the Tailor, and I'm wondering, oh, what could be going through Avery's head at this point? And you look, and it's nothing. Nothing's going through his head as he drives in his pickup truck back to the security house at the ranch, and that's it. That's freaking it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, he's just had this monumental conversation. You can't give us any insight into what he's thinking from there. But if you look at a page like when he's running across the drawbridge to Bloodroot's castle, oh, there's all sorts of shit in there. I mean, he knows how to load the page up when he needs to. It's just that at some pages he doesn't. And I don't know what the criteria is for that. So it's not like he doesn't know that there are some pages that need to have something in there, that need to have some filler in order to make it interesting to the reader, because there's so much where it's just left to the reader's imagination, and I can only fill in so many blanks and still think that I've gotten value. In fact, that was one of the things that really bugged me about Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's Batman: The Long Halloween. The first time I read Batman: The Long Halloween, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And then the second time I read Batman: The Long Halloween, I realized just how much I was bringing to the table, because I had read Batman for a long time. All of those characters and stuff, those were things that I was familiar with. I knew who Killer Croc was. I knew who Solomon Grundy was. I knew who, all of these different characters were. And I didn't realize how much of the history that was in my head was actually coming out into my reading enjoyment of the page. Because the second time that I read Batman: The Long Halloween, I said, okay, I just want to know what it is I'm supposed to get out of this. And there was so little. I mean, Jeff Loeb just basically blorped a couple of things on the page and then expected the reader to do the rest of the work, which worked brilliantly on me the first time I read it. But the second time I read it, I realized this is kind of garbage. I mean, Tim Sale's artwork was beautiful, but at the same time, I'm bringing, my archival knowledge of Batman is what is informing this video. What is informing this, my enjoyment of this comic. It's everything I know already. But Jeff Loeb was not bringing anything new to the table. And so Jeff Loeb overall has not impressed me so much as a writer, although his earlier work, the 8-part Challengers of the Unknown series that he did with Tim Sale, brilliant book. I still love that book. I can't get rid of it. And when he did a 5-part series on the death of Captain America, there were 1 or 2 issues in there that I thought were pretty decent. I think the first issue with Wolverine and then the third issue with Hawkeye were pretty decent. The rest of them, I was just kind of like, meh. But yeah, that Batman: The Long Halloween was an example of where I was bringing so much to the table that when I went back to read it and realized, okay, there's practically nothing in this book. So I was disappointed from that point. And I feel like that's what Eric is expecting his readers to do a lot of the time, is that he's expecting the readers to bring so much to the table that he doesn't have to do the heavy lifting of writing in the important thoughts and the important scenes. So let's see what we got. Shadron's okay. Garfield's Bizarre Adventure. Shadron not speaking English, however, I disagree with. Well, I mean that's up for debate. I myself, if you wanted to see ISOM confront real evil, the only real evil there is to confront is human evil. And so if you can't even communicate with the person you're fighting, you're not really fighting evil, because that person is just operating according to whatever instincts and cultural influences he knows. It's hard to say until you've established a common moral framework that this is evil, and that I've lost in the face of such evil. Well, in the face of what evil? It's hard to even say. So that's why I would have rewritten the dialogue to be, just at least a couple of pithy words to show that Chadron was well aware that he's working within the same moral framework as the rest of us, and that he understood that what he was doing was basically hunting these kids for sport. And that's something that we could all agree upon was evil. So that was my take on it. Evolution DL1 says, I think Alpha Core will be cheaper than ISOM. Possibly. I mean, I would love that. I definitely don't like paying $35 a hit. Gleaming Star says there are too many teaser characters in ISOM. Yeah, kind of. I mean, when you think about it, there were only like 3 tops. I would say that Gooding, Bloodruth, and Larry Shungite would probably be the 3rd teaser character. I don't think Lincoln Eusebio had any legs on him or was intended to. But yeah, there was a lot of like jumping off stuff. And honestly, my theory about ISOM number 2 is that it's actually a mishmash of the first 2 storylines that he intended to put out for the book. I can't say that for sure, but it would have been really easy for him to put in the scene with Sam going into the security house and in issue number 1, and then have a continuance of maybe Mrs. Willard, Sam's wife, showing up at Avery's door in issue 2 and saying, have you seen Sam? He hasn't come home since last night, etc. And then have the whole ill-advised story arc within issues 1 and 2, and then issue 3 go to the story about, okay, now how I need to look for Sam. What is, I've handled my family business. I need to look for Sam. Where is Sam? And then go to the security house, find the monsters there, boom, and then have the story with Gooding and Bloodruth, etc., etc. It really feels like there's 2 storylines that are being jammed together in this particular set of books, and it doesn't flow well for me. I feel like we went right off the path with ISOM number 2, where I was expecting, some looking back into Avery's history, and maybe that's where Bloodruth would have been introduced. Maybe a team up with her and maybe with Gooding as well. Although Gooding just doesn't even sound like a superhero name. But anyway, and then go forward and resolve the stuff with Darren. That's what I would have liked to have seen, but that's just not how it turned out. What are my predictions for the upcoming Alpha written by Chuck Dixon? That's Garfield's Bizarre Adventure. He said it's going to be a standalone story, not in parts like ISOM. That would be nice. I would like to see a standalone story for Alpha Core number 1. Don't know if that's going to happen, but definitely Chuck Dixon is the guy who can get that done. Let's see. Gleaming Star says the 2 metahumans in Club Merc, the band, Shungite. Why so many characters who have 0 interaction with the story? Yeah. I mean, Michael Copper and Lillian, I still don't know her last name. I don't know why they were there. That was one of those where they could have been introduced in a later issue. And it's really his own fault for not naming those characters in there so that people could have gotten excited about them. But really, what was there to get excited about other than the fact that, oh, look, she she and he can both generate a little bit of energy out of their hands or eyes or whatnot. Okay. When I first saw this, okay, Gleaming Star says, when I first saw the stadium in ISOM 2, I was certain that it was the band from ISOM 1 coming into the plot. You're talking about Norfolko, right? Yeah, I was not surprised that the Southwest, well, that's actually something that I got clued in on when somebody on Twitter mentioned the fact that it was the Southwest or the Southern Style Wrestling League had made an appearance in ISOM number 2. So I knew that was what the stadium scene was for. Let's see. What else have we got here? Oh, hey, Andy here. Andy R says, thanks for reading the first 2 issues of Cargo. I'm actually working on the revised art for one of the panels. Yeah, Andy, are you Andy Rad Art 8498? Because I just did the video talking about the scene where Avery's talking with Cedric and how I still think that the that Cedric is the speaker in that scene. I think I figured out why it is that the captions are the same. If you look for my video, look who's talking. I don't know if you're the same one, but in any case, check that out if you want to see why it is. I still think that Cedric is the one speaking in that portion. Yeah, that had to get its own video when I heard that, because I was like, oh my god, how could I be that wrong? And it turns out I don't think I was. Let's see. Chuck Dixon did say back, this is Garfield's Bizarre Adventure. Chuck Dixon did say back in his days at DC, some characters were created simply as a plot device, but some gained interest from fans and got their own stories. Well, that's not surprising. I mean, think of how many characters used to be created back in the day. I mean, if you go back through the first 20 or so issues of Spider-Man, God, they created the Vulture, Kraven the Hunter, the Chameleon, who else? The Living Brain, who actually made an appearance just recently. That was a shocker. Green Goblin. I think I already mentioned Dr. Octopus, didn't I? Who else? Who else was in those first few issues? The Lizard. The Lizard was another one. Now, at some point, they started reusing the same characters and bringing back certain characters, but for the most part, and sometimes they brought in characters from other things, like Spider-Man number 5 featured Doctor Doom from the Fantastic Four. So that was an interesting crossover right there. But yeah, they would create a whole bunch of characters, and then I guess the popular ones would be the ones that came back for a recurring theme. And I would expect that happens in most places. If you look at all the characters that were created, just look at Superman's Rogue Gallery. There's like probably a good 50 characters in there that were almost recognizable by all the fans. There were even characters like, oh, my screen froze for a second while I was taking a drink. I was like, well, I guess that's going to be me for the rest of the video. Yeah, I mean, there's even characters like Terraman. Who remembers Terraman as being a villain in Superman's stable? Like, oh my gosh, I remember when they brought him back after the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I'm like, really? I'm surprised this is one you even felt like bringing back. But he has a huge rogues gallery, and it's the one that the audience loved most, I'm sure, that wound up becoming the ones who became recurring characters. Let's see here. Yeah, Evolution DL1 says we still know very little about Norfolk. Yeah, we don't know jack crap about Norfolk since they were introduced. And I thought, honestly, they were going to be the first book released after ISOM, but I guess people loved Alphacore and Yaira more. Angels of the Renaissance says, how are you doing today, Mike? Well, other than the fact that I got cut off from commenting on YouTube for 24 hours, pretty good. Oh, gosh. Yeah, and I'm working on the last of the ISOM video, the ISOM number 2 videos. So I've got one more ISOM number 2 video that I'm working on, and after that, I'll be done with it. I think my estimation of the book is my estimation of the book and its overall quality is pretty summed up in my screw it video. But I do have some things to say about just some general stuff, not like huge issues. Actually, the last quarter, when you get to the point where he meets Bloodruth and forward, there's not really a whole lot to critique on that because a lot of that is just action. And Cliff Richards really does do a pretty good job of action sequences. I mean, yeah, he's got his poor transitions here and there. Of course, we all remember, Avery and Santuan looking like they're about to collide, and then they're skidding backwards in the next scene. I mean, okay, but there's only maybe one jarring transition in pretty much the whole fight sequence until the very end. That last page of the fight sequence with ISOM and the monsters, I'll cover that in the next video. But I at this point I feel like Eric's trying to reveal ISOM's powers without trying to just say what the powers are. Because what I see in that scene, what I'm reading into that scene, is either more than is there or is perhaps what he intended to put into that scene. But I have my theories about it, and I'll explain that more in the video that I do. But I just feel like the artwork could not by itself, without help from text, convey everything that Eric wanted to convey in that particular story, or in that particular scene, where I think what's happened. Well, I'll get into it in that video. Let's see. Run the Point Nut says, just joining, watching on double speed. You do the same thing that I do. Yeah, I tell you what, I'm glad. I think let's see, I started this about 1:15. So, yeah, in 15 minutes, you'll be all caught up. Evolution DL1 says, I think we're going to find out about his powers in ISOM number 3. Who knows? Who knows? Honestly, he's playing that really, really close to the vest. Closer than I think he should. Closer than I even think he should have in issue number 1, because when I think about how I'm going to do the Let's Fix videos for ISOM number 1, because I do plan on doing a sequence on those now that I have a second copy that I cannibalized for scans. When I think about his powers and what I think his powers are, I don't know that should have been such a secret from the beginning. There's only so much secrecy you can really have when it comes to your hero's powers, and I know that's something that kind of made the last quarter of ISOM number 2 a little bit of a boring fight. Because when I was reading through it and I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I'm interested in seeing ISOM use his powers here. But right now, the only powers that I know he has for sure are super strength. He can leap a great distance. He's got some measure of invulnerability. And although, here's something that I don't understand. Well, I guess it's because of his suit. His suit must have had some extra durability that kept him from getting clawed the way that he did earlier in the book. That's the only thing that I can think of, because if you're being dogpiled on by a whole bunch of creatures, why aren't they ripping you to shreds the way that they would have been ripping you in the security house? So I don't know if that entirely makes sense, but it is what it is. But he's strong. He can throw those monsters around. He can punch them. He can kick them, and he can do it. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, it's a good thing that Cliff Richards can do a lot of good dynamic scenes with good fight transitions. And you also had the little side story with Bloodruth finding Sam. But there's a lot to be desired from a book that just kind of descends into fighting. And yet, I would almost say that was the most entertaining part of the book. The most entertaining part of the book was the part where Eric largely shut up and just let Cliff Richards tell the story. But that's not really a reason to keep silent. That's a reason to improve your writing so that what's on the page doesn't interfere with the action that's going on. So yeah, I found the last portion of that to be an entertaining read, but at the same time kind of frustrating, just because it was it was a little bit on the hollow side. You know, there wasn't a whole lot to give us on that. Oh, let's see here. Gleaming Star says, not knowing ISOM's powers makes it difficult to know when he is actually in peril. That is true. That is true. I mean, when you don't know, that's one of the reasons why I wrote what I did about the scene between Darren and Santuan. I think it was in my video, Screw It. I wrote a scene in which Darren actually demonstrates the effect of the pistol on Santuan, showing that it can pierce, you know, Santuan's skin, and therefore, you know, it's a danger to Santuan at least. And in the same way, it would be a danger to Avery. So the idea being that if Avery's and Santuan's invulnerability or limited invulnerability is on par, then that would make Darren a serious threat to Avery. And so we would actually get a sense of fear for their next meeting, whenever that would be. Because we would know that Darren has the gun, but Avery wouldn't know that Darren has the gun. Angels of the Renaissance. Mike, would you ever write your own comic? That would be interesting. I would. Right now, I've been asked to, well, I have delivered an 8-page script based off of somebody else's story concept. So that is in the works. And then I am working on editing some comics or giving editorial input on some comics. I've got 2 right now that I'm working on. One is called Cargo, and Andy R in the chat is responsible for that one. And then there is another one called Dark Star that I'm taking a look at. So I'm giving editorial input on those, and I've written the other script for them. There's one other script, a 12-page script that's an original of mine that I've delivered to an artist, but that was more just so he would have something to practice on. It wasn't like we entered into any kind of agreement on publishing it. Although, you know, if he got done with it and wanted to publish it and say, you know, written by me, drawn by him, that'd be fine. Otherwise, it might be a story that I take somewhere else and have someone else draw that. But yeah, I mean, I would even write a story for the Rippaverse, which brings me to the question on which this live stream was actually posed. I feel like I should wait until Run the Point Night is caught up, but I think I'm just going to have to go ahead. Let's see if the chat's all caught up first. Let's see. Evolution DL1 says, I think you being an editor fits you a lot more. That may well be true. That's one of the things that I think I totally screwed up on when I not only back in the day when I was thinking about actually writing things for comics, but also back in the day when I was in high school. Back in high school, I actually thought about taking journalism as a class, but the thing that I feared about journalism is that they would assign me the sports beat, and I had no interest in sports whatsoever. So the idea of having to write journal articles, and I don't know if there were any, like, you know, journalism people from in high school if you took journalism classes back then. I actually think I would have enjoyed that as a subject. Even if I didn't wind up going into a career in journalism, I think I would have enjoyed that, having that for an elective of some sort, because that would have given me some insight into the editorial process of you know, a newspaper man or something. And I think that's where I probably would have shined, would be taking what other people had written. And I remember there was one time when we had to put together, this is a high school project, we had to put together a 1-page like cover sheet for a newspaper that basically had a newspaper front page. And I, you know, selected the title of the newspaper. I arranged things into columns. I don't know if I actually had the opportunity to muddle with the text, but I definitely would have, because I remember thinking at the time, oh, this writer turned in a good piece, but it would have been better if this portion occurred before this portion. You know, same words, just rearrange the paragraphs. And I think I would have enjoyed that kind of work. But I never realized. I always thought you had to just come in through the bottom and then go to the top. Like you had to start as a writer in journalism, and then you would get to the editorial stage because the editorial people were the people who had the most experience. And I don't know. I don't know if that's the case or not. I do know that in comics there are people who started out as editors and then became writers. I remember. I think Ethan Van Sciver was saying that Peter Tomasi was an editor before he became a writer, and he was a really good editor. And then he went and became a really good writer. I think some of Peter Tomasi's stuff is some really good stuff out there, especially if you ever read his Black Adam six issue series that came out after 52. That was a really good series, and it really captured the character of not only Black Adam, but even of Captain Marvel when he wasn't even in the freaking book. I mean, Black Adam had a one sentence description of Captain Marvel that just blew away most of what anybody had done up to that point. And I don't know, I didn't actually read like Power of Shazam back in the day. And by the way, Power of Shazam really needs to be collected in an omnibus format because I think they had exactly like 50 issues and then a few specials. That would be the perfect length to put into an omnibus. So I'd like to see that whole series recollected. I might even buy it. I don't know. I don't know. I definitely would be interested to see it though, just because all those Fawcett characters that Jerry Ordway made use of. That just seems like it'd be a hell of a gift for somebody. Let's see what else. What else? So yeah, I mean, maybe I could have come into comics via the editing route, and I just didn't realize that route was available. I think Mark Waid was another one who was an editor and then he became a writer. I'm not sure about that though. But I do think that there are several people who kind of made that transition. They started out as editors or assistant editors at least, and then moved into the writing sphere. And some of them did really well. I mean, if that's true of what I just said about Mark Waid and Peter Tomasi, it's definitely possible for a person to start out as an editor and then move into the writing business. Who do I think is a better writer, Chuck Dixon or Mike Baron? That question comes from Garfield's Bizarre Adventure. Offhand, I'm going to go with Chuck Dixon, and the only reason being is that I've read more of his stuff than I have of Mike Baron's, and I've had reason not to be impressed with some of Mike Baron's stuff. Mike Baron, if I'm not mistaken, was responsible for some Valiant comics back in the day, and I read everything to do with Valiant comics back in the day. Everything. Oh, Puma Fist, how's it going? We're talking about Garfield's Bizarre Adventures question. Who do I think is a better writer, Chuck Dixon or Mike Baron? And I'm going with Chuck Dixon just because I've read a lot of his Batman stuff. I don't know that I've read much of anything else from Chuck Dixon, though. I did read Law Dog. That was something that he did back in the day, but I was not terribly impressed with that. Who else? Who else? I don't know what Chuck Dixon's really done beyond that, and maybe that's just. So I guess I'm just remembering his Batman work from back in the day. Although I will have to, I do wonder about who was it that took over. Was it Alan Grant or was it somebody else? When they started the Bane storyline, the Bane storyline, it started in Batman, I think, actually. Well, it probably started with Vengeance of Bane. But there was a Batman issue in which he's about to reveal his secret identity to Vicky Vale because he's just tired of being alone. He's just tired altogether. And it's such a shift in character from the previous issues that it's just a noticeable change. It's almost like, okay, we're going to have Bruce Wayne be really, really tired now, and we're going to have this long arc where he's going to get his back broken, and then he's going to have to give up being Batman for a while. We'll have this new character from out of the blue take over, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember not being very impressed with how they handled that, and also with how they handled the character of Tim Drake from that point forward, because that character who was previously so serious, he was created as such a serious character, a serious foil for Batman. All of a sudden, they injected a little bit of levity and humor into him that I don't think was warranted. He actually started calling Alfred Alfie, which I thought was just totally out of character for him. And I don't know who was responsible for doing that. See, Pumafest says Mike Baron did fantastic work on the Punisher. Dixon wrote some good Punisher as well, but Baron was not afraid to be brutal. Yeah, I never read the Punisher, with the exception of Garth Ennis's run. The Punisher was a character who was occasionally interesting to me, but normally when he would do like a crossover with some of the other Marvel superheroes. And I just couldn't get into the idea of following around a guy whose basic premise was, okay, he just wants to kill the bad guys. And okay, but how does he grow? How does he change? He doesn't have any powers, so that doesn't make it interesting. He doesn't really have a cast of characters surrounding him except for Microchip that I knew of. So I'm just, and maybe it's just the fact that I never read the series that I don't have an appreciation for some of the other elements that either Baron or Dixon wrote into that. But I always felt like where I remember Mike Baron from is from two places. It's from Valiant Comics, and there was also Nexus, of course. He did Nexus, but there was also Badger. He has a tendency to be like, skirting the edge of weird, and that put him onto a couple of different Valiant titles. One of them was Archer and Armstrong. He, I think, took over for Barry Windsor Smith after Barry Windsor Smith left the title for art and story, and then it was Baron and Vosberg from that point forward, at least for a while. And you could tell the change in tone. It wasn't quite the same quirky story that it was before. It just felt like the characters had become a little bit stereotypical when he took over. And then also, he took over Turok Dinosaur Hunter from did he take over from Tim Truman on that one, or was Tim Truman one of the artists on that one? I'm not sure. But I don't think he started writing Turok. I think he wrote it later. And I think he did a better job on that because that was, also one of those that's kind of on the edge of quirky. Nexus is probably one of the best things that he ever did. Nexus with him and Steve Rude. And I have yet to read all of that in its entirety because I actually had the opportunity at Half Price Books at one time to see an entire set of the Nexus Dark Horse archives. And I swear to God, I'm looking at that stuff and I'm just thinking to myself, is this one of those buy it now and regret it later kind of moments? Do I just want to go ahead and snap all this stuff up? Because I don't know if I'm going to like this or not. I bought the first 3 volumes, and I found those first 3 volumes at other half-price bookstores. So I had read the first 3 volumes, and the 3rd volume ends with Nexus, with us about to be revealed the source of Nexus's power, which is the alien entity called the Merc, and when the Merc was revealed, I was like, okay, I'm very curious to see what happens next. So I went around to the half-price bookstores looking for a volume 4, and there was one store, the main store down here in Texas, which had volumes 4 through 12, just right there. And I thought, oh crap, because even buying all that stuff at half price, that was going to be a major purchase. Like, dear Lord, I was very, very nervous about making that purchase. I didn't really know if I wanted to do that or not, and so I held off. And again, it was probably one of those buy now, regret it later things. But honestly, I asked the person up at Half Price Books, I said, do you mind if I read them? No, I take that back. I decided not to buy it. And then I decided, well, maybe they'll let me browse through it just to see if I want to buy it. And so I went to the Half Price. I went back to the Half Price Books. And I asked the guy at the counter, and I said, there are some comics in the lockbox that I would like to browse through. And, can I just pay you to let me browse the books? Because I know they're in the case where you can't browse through them. And he's like, oh, hell, you can just browse them for free. So he opened the case, and I actually took volumes 4 through 11 because 12 was gone. That was sad. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to buy volume 12, but 12 was gone. And so I actually sat there in half price books for about 2 hours, and I just skimmed volumes 4 through 11 of Nexus. And I absorbed the story fairly well. And I just felt like it was something that was interesting, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. So I just said, "Nah, I'm not going to get this after all." And I eventually gave up my copies of Nexus volumes 1 through 3. Now, when I look back, it's like I wonder if I had actually taken the time to sit down and read those in their entirety and in their, just take them in as opposed to skimming through them really fast paced, if I would have appreciated them more. So, one of these days I may find a copy and go back through them. I don't know. I just can't get over the fact that they named the title character Horatio Hellpop. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, what? I honestly, I honestly have. I always think that Nexus would be a great movie property. I think that Nexus would be a great movie property, and I always have the first line of what the trailer would say, and it's always, "My name is Horatio Hellpop, and I can't sleep. When I dream of murder, genocide. And when I wake, I have to find the ones who did it and punish them." Something like that. It would be a really cool trailer. It would be a really cool trailer. It would probably be a really cool movie concept. I'm surprised that nobody's tried to pick up Nexus as a concept. Although I would say you'd have to strip out like the weirder elements of it, because although one of the things that I think Mike Barron and Steve Rude were excellent at was world building. They built like an entire world for Nexus, and they kept using like characters who were interrelated with one another and kept bringing them back into different kinds of conflicts with one another. It was really fascinating to see some of the ways that those characters wove in and out of the story of Nexus. And I never did get to the end of that story. So I think one of these days, I'll bookmark the idea, but I'd like to go through and see how the story ended, and maybe what even carried on from there. But it's hard to know what is really Nexus canon and what is not. First time I ever encountered Nexus was actually as part of the Valiant line, because it was Magnus Robot Fighter versus Nexus, and you actually had to wait. No, I'm thinking of Magnus Robot Fighter versus Predator. If you ever saw Magnus Robot Fighter versus Predator, that's actually canon Valiant material, and you have to have it as part of your essential Valiant collection. I'm not kidding. Magnus Robot Fighter versus Predator. You have to have that to have the classic Valiant, because there's an artifact in there that winds up playing into the later Magnus stuff. Garfield's Bizarre Adventure says, "Who do you see as the artist for Gooding? Any guesses?" Nope, anybody's guess. I have no idea. I've been crap at guessing so far. I mean, I thought it was going to be Jerry Ordway on Alpha Core, but it turns out it was Joe Bennett. Although I'm glad it's Joe Bennett, in the sense that I hate the fact of how the guy got booted off of really Marvel or any DC work for the mistakes he made in Immortal Hulk. I mean, I'd like to think that that was just innocent mistakes as opposed to actual anti-Semitism in there. If you haven't heard the story, I mean, basically he drew a scene with a jewelry shop, and the jewelry shop had a Star of David on it, and it said, instead of jewelry, it actually said Jewery. And he was writing it backwards on there, and he was just like, I just screwed up. I was trying to make, something that was, I mean, maybe it was a Jewish diamond shop or something like that, but, do those not exist? I don't know. So, erring on the side of, one of the artists I would love for the Rippaverse to pick up, and this seems kind of, ironic for me to say, is that guy. Oh God, what was his name? I cannot remember his name, but he was on a couple of issues of X-Men for a while. and he got booted from X-Men after he started incorporating some like Muslim extremist symbols and not slogans, but just symbols and letters, sequences of letters and numbers or things that related to Muslim extremism or things like that. And he put those in the comic, and he got thrown out of Marvel Comics for that. And he was like apologetic and said, "I did this to myself. Sorry, blah blah blah." I would love to see somebody give him a second chance and just say, "Look, you pull that same kind of crap, you're done. But we'll still give you a chance at this," because he was such a kinetic artist. I mean, he had such potential. I mean, he drew a cover for X-Men that actually made me want to read the book, because that cover was just so lifelike movement. Oh God. Oh, Puma Fist says that I tried to hire him to work on a comic idea that you had, and he declined. Really? Oh, interesting. Yeah, Puma Fist asks, when are you going to write a comic, Mike? I had actually reported earlier. I did turn in an 8-page script that is being worked on right now. It's not my original idea. I scripted the comic off of somebody else's idea, but that we'll see whenever that comes out. Let's see here. Yeah, Garfield's Bizarre Adventure says, I remember chatting with you on a live stream and you had Joe Bennett as your second chance as the Alpha Core artist. No, I never really thought it was him. I had heard it might be him. And I think it was the fact that somebody had brought it up as a suggestion, thinking that I think he's in talks with Joe Bennett or something. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, Joe Bennett, that would make sense as well. But my one guess was always Jerry Ordway, and I never like was thinking Joe Bennett was. It was never a guess that came from within me. It was something that I heard from somebody else. Let's see. Mudbutt says Dan Fraga's comic was funded in 2020, but still hasn't come out. I don't know anything about that. Let's see. Run the Point Night says, I had a journalism concentration in college. You're right. You start off doing hard news writing, minimal room for creative writing, mostly reporting the 5 W's, which I think would have been fine at the time if that's really what I wanted to do. I was afraid of the subjects that I would get assigned, because I did not want to write sports. That was the one thing, is that, okay, if there's any chance, if there's even the remotest chance that I'm going to get assigned a sports beat, I'm just not going to even take this class. And I think I probably shot myself in the foot doing that. Oh, Evolution DL says, what are the 5 W's? Who, what, when, why, and where? Just basically the facts. Do whatever the facts are. Or I don't know. In a journalistic situation, is it a how more than a why? Could be a how more than a why. There's a W in how somewhere. Okay, let's see. I'm all caught up with the chat for now, so let's get to the subject of the live stream that I announced in there. Who is my favorite Rippaverse character? And we went through 3 rounds of questions in the community poll. And the first time the majority answer was right. It was someone other than ISOM, Alpha Core, and Yaira. Yeah, those are definitely not my 3 favorites. And then the next round was Gooding, Bloodruth, who else did I put in there? Larry Shungite, and I think somebody else. Did I put Shadron? Shadron was the 4th choice on that one. And a lot of people picked Gooding on that one. That was the one that had the most responses. And I basically, if you look at my video, the Gooding, the Bad, and the Ugly, and also my video, Screw It, you'll see the reasons why. No, actually, it's just the Ask Screw It video. The Ask Screw It video has the section ruining Gooding, because that is a character that I thought was interesting, and then my interest was completely ruined. The premise for Gooding I thought was so interesting was that he'd be a low rent Tony Stark. He would be a guy who had to build his tech on the cheap, but was still capable of building and developing incredible things. But he would be doing it from the same materials that you or I could buy. just things that you could purchase off of Amazon. It wouldn't be like he lived in Avengers Mansion or any of this kind of crap. And unfortunately, that's where the book seemed to take him. That he seemed to be he seemed to have this like castle, but that you couldn't even see from a distance. Although, after I saw Bloodroot's castle, I was like, maybe it's better we didn't see Gooding's hideout from a distance. And after that, I was just not interested in the character at all. It just seemed like he was a Hank Pym type because he had the robots around that were kind of serving him like Ultron drones. So yeah, I that one I the answer in that case was still someone else. Now the answer on the third round, I think I put up Lincoln Eusebio, Darren Fontano, Santuan. Who else? I think I put Altona on there. And then there was somebody else that I put on there. Oh, Cedric the Tailor. And yes, I mean, Run the Point Night, you were right from the beginning. It was Santuan. Yeah, Santuan is my favorite character in the Rippaverse. And the reason being is that he's such a conflicting mixture of intelligence and yet not wanting to exploit his intelligence. That's the thing that I find fascinating about him, is that he goes through life as a bouncer, pretty much. I mean, that's all we've seen him do. He goes through life as a bouncer, and yet when he speaks and he's able to open up what it is he's thinking about, back in let's see, hold on a second. These were actually the panels in ISOM #1 that sold me the book, because I was really wondering. It's like, am I even going to buy this book? And then I finally saw, because my thing about buying these books is that I want to see pages of lettered dialogue. I don't just want to see art. You have to show me something other than art, because art can be great and then the writing can be crap. If the writing is crap, it's still not a good book. So, and it goes back to the time I watched League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. If you ever watch that movie with the sound off, great movie. If you listen to it with the dialogue, holy crap, that movie's bad. But, you can actually accomplish a lot just with images. And if the images are good, but the writing is bad, then you still got a bad book. And I wanted at least some idea that the writing I was going to get in ISOM #1 was something that was going to be intriguing to me. And this is the page that did it for me. It's the page where Santuan talks about how he hates the term accept, or he's not fond of the term accept, and he's basically philosophically expounding on it. And I'm like, I have no idea what the rest of this book is going to be like, but I will buy it just to figure out what the hell he's talking about. Yeah, and so I see in Santuan this mixture of intelligence kept under wraps, and that to me is the core. It is the core. What would you say? It's the core character point of him, is that he's actually a very intelligent person when you listen to him talk, and when he actually gets the chance to talk, and he's not just being treated like like muscle. Then you realize there's actually a brain in there. And so, yeah, if I were to be given the opportunity to write a Rippaverse book, it would probably be a Santuan one shot, and I would probably put him up against Gooding, because it wouldn't be so much a knockdown drag out fight kind of book. It would be more of a book about here's looking at Gooding and seeing what he could have been. That's what I would say. Except there are things that I almost don't want to explain anymore, because I might write something that's just like my own character, and explore the themes that I want to explore within that idea. But it's kind of like I don't know. I'd almost rather save myself for the Rippaverse in that case. We'll see. But really, it'd be about how you have this really intelligent guy who decides not to use his intelligence and instead rely on his muscles. And why does he do that? What is the cultural reason for that? What did he experience? What shaped his values growing up that he would basically, you know, dumb down his image and just go around his muscle? I mean, it's kind of a sad thing because there are people who do that in the real world. I mean, the kid who lived next to me, he was a white kid, and he had a photographic memory. He could have made straight A's if he wanted to, but he was like teased by other kids to the point where he deliberately made worse grades on his tests and things like that because he didn't want to be thought of as smart. It was something that according to the people he hung out with, it was not cool to be smart. And so I would be interested in writing a story like that about Santuan. That's what I would do. But that's probably not in the cards considering some of the harsh things I've said about Eric July up to this point. So if I'm going to do anything like that, then I should probably do it myself with some own set of characters or some one shot. What I'd really like to do is do some work for some other people and then get established to the point where I can say, hey, I've got a 12, 16, 24 page story that maybe you could put in an anthology book and then put something like that together. So that's the kind of path that I'm looking at right now. It's like right now I'm getting some editing work. Right now I'm getting a little bit of script work, and I expect, my hope is that picks up, and then from that point forward, we'll just see where it goes. But in the meantime, I'm not like hard driving towards anything in particular. Let's see. Evolution DL1. I like that scene despite the rounds it was making on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, that's where I saw it. That's where I saw it was on Twitter, back before I got booted off of Twitter. And yeah, that's what caused me to buy the book. Garfield's Bizarre Adventure. Well, Mike, I have some agreements and some disagreements with your takes, but I do like your analysis and breakdowns. Well, that's to be expected. Well, thank you for liking the analyses and breakdowns. I mean, it's to be expected that we're not going to agree on everything. Yeah, the next video that I do, and I think I'm going to close down this live stream in a little bit because my voice is starting to give out. The next video that I do is going to be my final thoughts on ISOM number 2. And I just have a few things here or there. I think probably the worst thing that happened in at the end of ISOM number 2 is just that hard Youngblood ending stop, followed by the after credits reel. It's like, give me a freaking break. I mean, we've done there's been too much done with this whole after credits thing that you can tell that people are forcing their books to go into that vein, and it really should not have happened in ISOM number 2. That's one of the things that I've definitely got to bring up, because I swear when I got to the end of ISOM number 1 and all of a sudden I'm seeing an acknowledgments page, I was like, damn it, he Rob Liefeld'd me again. It's bad enough, the whole panel to panel lack of continuity with Lincoln Eusebio and his hairstyle, but now you've got to do this Youngblood number 1 ending on me. Oh God, yeah, I had to go back all the way to 1992 with that one, and I was like, oh, that ending hurt so bad. Hard stop. Like, no, don't end it here, and don't do that stupid after credits thing. You just go ahead and tell us the story straight through, then give us your acknowledgments, and then let us go. Oh, yeah, I was not happy about that one, especially since he doesn't give like the name of the big bad. But anyway, all right. Well, thanks everybody for watching the live stream. I'm Mike Partika. Please do subscribe so that you get notified of future streams, and I will talk to y'all later. Thanks again for joining.